Hey, this is Todd, and I'm talking about nerfing player character abilities. The idea for this video came from me reading some different Reddit posts where some Redditors were looking at what the Adventurers League was doing in terms of what they allow and what they don't allow, and then positing that something should be done in their own games about abilities that or classes or races that the Adventurers League didn't allow. And this was primarily came up with the Aarokocra in terms of flying. So the first thing I want to mention is that the Adventurers League is sort of a lowest common denominator form of the game. They strip a lot of things out, or not a lot, but a number of things to make it simpler, to make it easy to run, because a lot of it could be run at open tables with whole different crews and different setups. And just to make it an easy baseline for everybody to come in and make it run, they want to pare down the choices and they want to pare down what is allowed because of the nature of an Adventurers League table. This is not a way for Wizards to say that Class A is broken or Race B needs to be fixed. It is simply to make a very pared down but easy experience for players if they're new. Sometimes it can be hard to deal with abilities, particularly ones like Flight that give you kind of a third dimension, but it can be harder to think about. There's enough going on maybe on the two-dimensional kind of ground level before you throw in Flight. Also, if there are for GMs of different ability levels, yeah, it can be a little bit of an extra dimension they have to consider. But they didn't exclude it from Adventurers League because it's somehow broken or needs to be, fixed. But that hasn't stopped Redditors from looking at that and saying, hey, do I need to fix Flight? Or how are some ways that I can fix Flight? So I thought I'd make this video not only talking about Flight, though that's going to be the main example I'm going to use, but really addressing a lot of how we as game masters look at player abilities. So the biggest one is that when you're creating your character, you're making a choice. There's an opportunity cost for that choice. If you decide to play an Aarokocra, you gain Flight. You also lose out on any other kind of racial species type bonuses that you may get. You're not getting the breath weapon of a Dragonborn. You're not getting all these other abilities. You're choosing to take Flight and you get that ability. So as a GM, if you're looking at that and you're thinking, I need to nerf Flight, keep in mind, number one, that a player made that choice. That part of the reason why they chose that race or species is because they want that Flight. And there was a cost to them for taking it. It wasn't just a freebie that they got on top of everything else. By taking Flight, they missed out on other things. That is a choice that they made that has a cost. So take into account the fact that, hey, this player chose to do this and they had to give up something for that. They had to pay for the right to fly. And this would go for any other ability. Any ability that you take, they're giving up something else. It is not some kind of free bonus that they're getting. The next thing to keep in mind, and in terms of things like Flight, and when you're looking at Adventurers League, is, if you're running an Adventurers League table, you don't know who's going to show up to your open table on a given night. And so you have to be sort of very open. And I think that's part of why they pare things down, is because as a GM, if you're GMing Adventurers League, you have no idea what party you're going to be playing with from one week to the next. If you're playing at a game shop that has open table D&D Wednesdays, the cast of characters you could get could differ wildly from night to night. So part of making that kind of going with a baseline that may be a little bit simpler, maybe pared down from all the choices you get in the books, in the source books, is to help GMs keep their prep level at a decent level, keep them sort of giving them an easy base to work with so they're not overwhelmed. But in your home games, you're going to have a set of players, however many that is. That's not changing. You're going to be well aware of week to week who's showing up for a campaign. Hopefully you're doing session 0 type preparations. You're going to know for day 1 and day 0 who's coming, what they are. So you're going to know ahead of time that, hey, someone's playing a race that's flying, that has a flying property like the Aarokocra. So that's something that I need to be aware of going forward. It's not a surprise. It's not something that one day they're just going to show up and have this flying creature. The next day they're going to be gone. In your home game, you're free to have everything. So there's nothing broken about these. You just have to be aware and prep for it. So I'm going to use flying as an example. And there are going to be other abilities that maybe have a special quirk to them or some way they have an advantage. But as I'm going to talk about with flying, also has a disadvantage that you can use, right? That the players will have to deal with. Those characters will have to deal with the advantage of flying. And then also, what does flying mean in terms of how they are perceived by, say, hostile creatures? So in terms of flying, I think some of the things I saw on Reddit is, oh, well, They can fly over a lot of obstacles. Of course, true. If you're planning an encounter based around climbing a high wall, yeah, the Aarokocra can just whoop, over the wall, fine and dandy. Another one might be, oh, well, they can scout ahead. Sure, they can scout ahead. But two things to keep in mind. One, as far as flying over an obstacle, okay, so they have made that obstacle more or less obsolete for that character. That doesn't mean that the party as a whole it's made, obsolete. It could be issues with that wall that make it. So yeah, sure, that one character can get on top, but maybe due to the nature of the wall, other characters may still have a hard time. Even if that character does make that particular obstacle more or less obsolete, that's okay. It's okay to have. It feels good as a player when you can use your ability and really make it count. It is totally fine. Hopefully you haven't put all your eggs in this basket of, oh, I'm going to have this wall encounter that's going to take the party hours and hours to solve. It's okay. Let them have their moment of, hey, look, I used my flight and we got over this thing and we didn't have to use whatever resources. That's perfectly fine. Let their power shine through. As far as scouting, one, you have to be outdoors to really scout. In fact, indoors, there's probably not going to be much flying at all. There's really nowhere to fly unless you're in giant caverns with high ceilings. You're not going to be able to get off the ground and go anywhere. So you're really talking about if you're in a wilderness situation, you can scout ahead. So, okay, so they can get up in the air and they can scout. But what does that really mean? So one, terrain is going to be very important there. If it's a forest, they can't see all that much. If there's a lot of tree cover, what are they going to see? They're going to see the tops of trees. Maybe they'll see a settlement out in the distance. If there's a castle or some kind of fortified position, maybe they'll see that. Maybe that's a big deal for you. You don't want them to see this. Well, now they see it, so you have to adjust yourself. But other than that, I'm not sure what the fear is that's being given away to them by being able to scout. They can see a little bit better. They can see a little bit farther. They can get up and they can look down at the landscape. The other part of it, though, is that as much as they're going out and seeing things are also seeing them. If you think about it, if you ever see a hawk or an eagle and a clear sky, driving down the road or, wherever you live, a big bird looks big. It's pretty noticeable if there isn't much else going on in the sky that there's a big bird there. But an eagle, I think I saw something last night on golden eagles, has a 6-foot wingspan. A man-sized Aarokocra has probably got a wingspan of 18 feet. So they're 5. I don't know how tall they are in the book. I suppose I could look it up. 5-6 feet tall with say 14 to 18-foot wingspan. It's going to be a huge thing in the sky that people are going to notice. And if people notice it and they're hostile, well, there's things called bows and arrows and other missile weapons that they can then fire at this creature. Number one. Number two, they've now been spotted. So if you have a party and they have the Aarokocra goes up, the Aarokocra sees whatever hostiles down there. The hostiles also see them and can also say, okay, the party's coming. So that's just one thing. So they can be, they are as visible as they are illuminating. So they're seeing stuff. They're also being seen. That also makes them a big target because it's very easy to see them and then try to take them down if you want to. I think the other thing is, and this may take a little bit of extra preparation on your part as a GM, but you're going to know this because you're going to know these characters are in your party, is that, I had somebody say, well, oh yeah, but if they're shooting at them, then these other people can do that. And I said, yeah, but you could have multiple sets of people. Like, what if the archers that the Aarokocra sees who firing at it aren't the main host that the party's worried about? What if the main antagonist that the party's after is somewhere else and they just have some archers over here who are just drawing the Aarokocra away? Maybe even giving it a false positive as far as that's where the enemy is and taking pot shots at it. There's a lot of ways you can use trickery. And in a world where flying creatures like this exist, assuming that this Aarokocra in your party isn't the unique individual in the world, that people know that there are birdmen who can fly around and do these things. And of course, in a fantasy world, there are things that can fly around who are intelligent anyway. People are going to take steps. They're going to take steps. Maybe they'll build more stuff, say underground, or they'll use tree cover, or say camouflage style canopies or just any kind of cover. They will use people on watchtowers with telescopes or long glass if they have it, or scrying if they have magic, or just using their own native vision to call out flying creatures and things of that nature. So to the people in the world, it should not be a huge shock if these creatures are around. If you're used to dealing with dragons and wyverns and Aarokocra and all kinds of stuff and griffins and all manner of flying creatures, the fact that you have this one in the party should not be shocking to anybody. And then they will take steps accordingly. And you, as the dungeon master, will decide which of those steps make sense. Not everybody's going to have an underground bunker. Not everybody's going to have these things. And then it's okay. Let the Aarokocra give the party an advantage against those low-level, unprepared parties. And just let them have it. That's fine. Against people who are more important, who are more organized, who are smarter, in a way, more prepared, they're going to prepare. And then even though the Aarokocra does give the party a different dimension, being able to scout, being able to fly, get that point of view, it also reveals them. And so they're going to have to be smart about where they deploy this dimension of theirs. And that's the kind of interesting play that I think you want to encourage, right? So if you're the party and you have a player, the character is the Aarokocra, maybe you don't send them out in the middle of the day when there's no clouds in the sky, because they're going to get picked out really fast. Even if they're not shot at, they're going to get seen probably for quite a distance if it's a clear sky and there's good visibility. And it's just made a big bullseye on it. And then also it's pointed out more or less where the party is. But maybe then you send it out at night. And then, of course, you can think about, well, if it's out at night, how does it deal with, I don't remember if they have night vision or not, but even then, visibility ranges and whatever, how do you deal with doing it at night? What can you do at night? And that adds another element of things the party can do, choices that they can make, and also ways that you as the GM can have actions that play upon their choices. And that's really, to me, that's the kind of stuff that drives the most interesting part of playing the game, is that chess match of the players do this, and then are they seen? Are they interpreted? How is that action interpreted? What does the adversaries do? They do something else, and then bang, 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 and it keeps flowing around. And the Aarokocra adds to that. And sure, it does. Having a third dimension of flight is going to make it slightly more complex. It's something else that you have to think about. But it's not something that's overwhelming. It's not something that really needs to be corrected or fixed or nerfed. All you need to do is take a few moments and think about how your world fits with flying birdmen in it. And if that means that you ditch a couple of obstacles that rely on the party not having flight, which, by the way, doesn't last all that long, because once you get into the sort of mid-levels, you're going to get more spells. There are more members of the party, magic users and whatnot, are going to get access to spells. If you have a druid with wild shape, they're going to have access to flying creatures. You have familiars that might be flying around. So it's not even as if a player character with flying is really somehow unique in terms of what the rest of the party has. They're just getting a little bit ahead of the pack. But again, they've paid a price for getting it ahead of the pack. So then as a GM, you just have to think about, how would the creatures, how would the peoples respond to these birdmen? And you could think of it on, a political level. Is it something that, hey, we don't allow birdmen around here because they might fly and see something? Are they treated a different way? And then again, as looking at individual defenses, if we know there are birdmen around, how do we set up our fortress? Do we put it mostly out of sight so that it's, hopefully invisible to these flying creatures? Do we use forests? Do we use caves? Do we just take care to always have archers in some way of maybe looking up or at night and things like that, trying to keep the sky in view for the most part? A lot of interesting things. Certainly, yes, it is more complicated, adds a little bit of more work to you, but there's a payoff. And the alternative, which is to try to find ways to weaken it and tone it down, it just takes the legs out from under a player who made a choice. They made a deliberate choice to pick that power. I think ultimately, just to wrap this up, when you're looking at correcting or whatever you think needs to be done with a player character ability, first thing is, don't just do it out of hand. Don't do it because somebody on Reddit said to do it. Don't do it because Adventures League made some kind of choice. Do it because of what's happening in your game. And that way, you're not only are you not just nerfing things and making house rules that don't need to be made, you're also showing that you're being flexible. You're being open to what's happening. You want to be open to what's going to happen before you make a change. I see people saying, "Oh, I'm about to start a game of 5e. What house rules should I adopt?" My question, my thing would be, don't adopt any. Just play and then see what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and then house rule accordingly. And it's the same thing when you're nerfing these abilities. Play the game first. Let somebody have one of these races, and you could tell them. I always say, be transparent. If you see someone coming to your table, session 0, and they say, "Hey, I want to play an Aarokocra," you could say, "Okay, but just to let you know, I'm a little bit wary of the flight, and I want to be open to, if it seems to be really unbalancing in the kind of game that we're playing, I want to be able to talk to you, and maybe we'll have to work something out. Is that cool with you?" And it should be cool with the player. And then, you can go about your business. And then if it is a problem, whatever defining problem, however you want it to be, that you can come back and work with the player on how to solve this problem. But, one is the transparency. Two is that you're working with the players. You're not dictating to them, and you're not just taking away choices because somebody on the internet told you to. You're doing it based on your game. But I think as far as these powers go, remember, they paid a price for them. Be on the side of trying it first. Be transparent. And then if it really is a problem, then talk to your players and maybe you can come up with an amicable way to solve it. But there's definitely no reason to just out of hand nerf something before you've even really seen it in your game. Let it ride. I guess in that sense, be a fan. This is something that comes up in a lot of things. Be a fan of your players. Let them try something out. If it doesn't work, by all means, work together to try to fix it, but don't nerf it out of hand just because. If you enjoy videos like these, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It helps me out a lot. I also have a Patreon if you'd like to support the show in a different way. Thanks for watching.